Okay, hello everyone. Another live stream, another new year. Happy 2022 to everyone who is watching. Today's topic is conversational AI and how conversational AI and machine learning are transforming our world. And we will look through the lens of retail and CPG in particular. And my guest today is Srini Vinakota, who is the Vice President for Product Development at Oracle Digital Assistant. Welcome, Srini.
Thank you, Bernard. Great to be here.
No, it's so lovely to have you here. Where are you joining us from today?
From San Francisco Bay Area.
Very good. So you lead the product management for Oracle Digital Assistant and the entire platform, and you work very closely with partners and customers in this space. And you are responsible for the entire product strategy and development for the ODA platform, where over the past years, I believe you focused on using deep learning based innovation in conversational AI, language, and speech capabilities for the Oracle Digital Assistant, right?
That's right. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
can you tell us a little more about yourself and what you do at Oracle and maybe a bit of your background?
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I lead product management for the Oracle Digital Assistant platform. Personally, I've been in this conversational AI space for more than 5 years now. I don't know if you remember the days of the Poncho cat.
Yeah.
We've come a long way since then.
Yes, very
um,
much.
and yeah, I over the years I've worked with enterprise customers, retail, e-commerce, CPG, etc. And at Oracle, my team actually manages the product strategy and delivery for the Oracle Digital Assistant platform, which is this deep learning based conversational AI platform. Many people are not sure what does this platform do. So I'll just give you a quick primer. We have customers like Office Depot, Kmart, and Hermes who use this platform to create their own digital assistants. Think of Alexa for Office Depot, right? So they've created their own digital assistant for customer self-service. And we also have a lot of internal app teams like our SCM supply chain team, our service teams, our sales teams, our HCM team. They all build pre-built skills for you to take and then quickly assemble your own digital assistants. So customers like Yum Brands, Honeywell, all of them use these employee self-service digital assistants based on the platform.
Very good. Anyone joining us, feel free to say hello and join the conversation if you have any questions or comments. I've just seen that Johnny just joined here saying, "Hi friends, good morning from Papua New Guinea." So we are truly worldwide as always. We have people joining us, and Mike just saying hello here from Cornwall. Mike has been on many live streams. I've got Mohammed saying hello from Iran. Just picking out a few interesting places here. We've got Salah joining from Yemen. So we have lots of people hopefully coming along. And as I said, feel free to ask questions if you have any or comment. So we said we want to look at this through the lens of retail and CPG. So what are some of the key challenges that you see, Srini, in the retail industry, in the CPG space?
Sure. See, in the last couple of years, it's been really crazy with respect to retail, right? So, personally, just when you look at it from a consumer perspective, right, there were all these unpredictable logistics and supply chain issues. Say, one week you're out of toilet paper, another week you're out of hand soap. And early on, it was even unclear if I had to go to a store, whether I would have to wait outside in a line, like how would social distancing be inside the store, all these challenges, right? And I don't know if you had this in UK, but here getting even a delivery appointment, say from Instacart, was like winning lottery. Like it was extremely difficult.
Mm,
So yeah, it was a very confusing time for consumers, especially in terms of the retail industry. But if you take that and look at it from an employee perspective, it meant even more challenging things, right? So you had some retailers who were classified as essential services. So those employees had to go to work and they had to sort of deal with all these work policies and guidelines, though, safety and health guidelines. And you had all these difficult shifts. And clearly, all this kind of led to greater amount of burnout and the great resignation and all those things, right? And retailers in general saw huge structural changes, right? So online sales became so much more prominent. And with that, if you think about it, the reverse logistics challenges, right? Like the number of returns from these online sales, they increased exponentially as well. So all in all, pretty challenging couple of years.
mm.
But the good thing is, you know, this last holiday season, the numbers have been looking pretty good, right? So November revenues were up 14% year on year. The overall holiday season itself is expected to be more than 11% compared to the year before. Same thing for CPG, right? Like about 10 to 11% growth compared to the year before. So I think things are looking better, and I'm cautiously optimistic for them. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, no, I agree. There are few industries that have been affected more than retail, I think, at the moment. Huge transformations, huge challenges. I think the supply chain challenges still remain a big
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
and this whole transition to online and hybrid models of shopping, I think, yeah. Um, can you illustrate some of those challenges, maybe with some examples from your customers to bring them to life?
Sure. Yeah. So, one of our customers, Echo, right? So they manufacture power tools for yard work, tree work, and things like that, right? So think mini saws, backpack blowers, things like that, right? And their business is usually very seasonal. So most purchases in spring through fall, but due to COVID, you have all these folks working from home, and suddenly, come spring 2021, there was a huge spike in the purchases through their channels like Home Depot and so on. Almost like 33% increase in their customer service queries. So that's an unexpected change that they had to deal with, given the current condition. Similarly, most of the retail customers saw a huge spike in their customer service queries this last holiday season. And we've also seen, brand name customers, both in grocery as well as in fast food. They are investing a lot more in their HR and employee help desk systems because they are feeling this pinch, that this need to manage and retain their employees.
Very good. So I was just looking through the stream, and Mike is asking a question. Do you think that COVID has accelerated conversational AI with retail and CPG? And what are the key business drivers for adopting this technology?
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of conversational AI, it has definitely accelerated with retail and CPG firms, especially in the last year and a half. Um, and I think if you think about the business drivers, it's typically the, on one hand, you have you sort of the employee challenges, sort of uneven sort of growth in your employee base. And on the other hand, you have sort of these unpredictable demand, like the ebb and flow of the customer patterns, right? And you combine this with the challenges in logistics and supply chain, like it's the sort of perfect trifecta, right? And you're now trying to figure out like how to do more with less. And conversational AI is certainly a place where you can start with.
Good. So how are some of your how are retailers using AI and machine learning, and in particular conversational AI more specifically, to help them? Have you got any good examples that would really highlight the benefits of it?
Sure. Yeah. If you think about it, I think it's broadly about the customer journey and the employee journey, right?
Hmm.
So if you think about the customer journey, it typically starts with the product discovery, right? Especially now that you may or may not be able to go into the store as frequently. So one of our customers, Kmart Australia, they launched this unique augmented reality based product discovery through their digital assistant, right? So customers can, for example, pick a sofa or an exercise bike, sort of see it from different angles, see how it looks from the top, and if you want to place it in your living room, how does it look? How do you rotate it? All that stuff, right? And that really sort of gives you the sense that you are there, that you are actually trying out the product. And right after that, the immediate next thing is you want to ask questions about the product. And this is where the digital assistant can come in and answer all these specific product specific questions as well. And if you're intelligent about it, you can then start sort of laying in these AI based recommendations and filtering right in the conversation, right? You don't necessarily need like three different things, one sort of AI filtering system and one recommendation system and one chatbot. You want it to be a single unified experience, and that's what Kmart was able to achieve with their Kbot, right?
Interesting. So this is using augmented reality, and at the same time, you then have a conversational AI alongside this, working within the same application.
Yeah, yeah. So if you go to their Kbot, you can actually try this out now. You can, of course, in their mobile app, you can try out the AR by itself, but you can start a conversation with the digital assistant. And let's say you're picking a product, it will then say, hey, here's you can look at this through AR, and right from within the digital assistant, you can launch the AR.
Very cool. I mean, this brings us to the whole idea of the metaverse, something I've been writing about recently quite extensively, and so bringing the conversational AI into the digital world, into this metaverse, into AR and VR. So super interesting. Any other examples, maybe on the employee side?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are, sorry, just in terms of the customer side, right? There are a bunch of these other examples like these. We have a partner who is doing virtual showrooming. That's another big one, especially with Metaverse, as you mentioned. But we also have more standard use cases, like, once you find the product you like, how do you get to a store that has it, right? In these times, you want to be very specific, right? Like you may want to ask for questions like, which store can I go to for this product after 7 p.m. on weekdays, right? And oftentimes, even for those simple questions, you pick up the phone and call and wait and all that stuff. You can essentially sort of skip all those sort of pieces, all those questions by using conversational AI.
Hmm.
You also have like reduction in the checkout process, but the biggest bang for buck, if you will, Bernard, is actually post sale, right? Like there is a huge ROI that you can get immediately once you implement this post sale. Like Echo, I was telling you about with their 33% spike, they were able to achieve 80% deflection of their customer service calls within 3 months, right? Same thing with Razer. We were just talking about gaming before this chat, and Razer is hugely popular. And again, 30 to 35 to 50% deflection rates for Razer, right? So yeah, I mean, these are all the very classic use cases, and companies are able to sort of deploy them, and within 2 to 3 months immediately see the value of
Mm. So if you were to pick some of some companies that you feel are using conversational AI really well, which
that.
ones would you highlight?
Yeah, I think most of the customers I mentioned before, we also have customers like Office Depot. They've sort of used conversational AI effectively across multiple channels, both for consumers as well as for their business customers, right? So especially as you're growing into a new line, it's very important to sort of keep that brand voice and brand consistency, right? So they've done it really well. And Hermes, I think you're probably familiar with the package delivery
Mm.
service in UK. They use conversational AI really well, not only to interact with customers, but also with these independent last mile delivery businesses, right? So about 15,000 or so of these independent businesses, they can really sort of reduce the support cost for them by saying things like, okay, hey, I want an alternate delivery location, or here are some special notes about my delivery, right? Like this person needs additional help because it's physically handicapped. You may just want to leave it in this particular location and so on, right? So yeah, I mean, I think there are several of these customers who are really pushing the envelope in terms of conversational AI and more importantly, the business results they are able to achieve from that.
Yeah, interesting. So, and I guess conversational AI comes in different ways. So you can have text based, which goes
Mhm.
via apps and websites, and then you have real voice based conversational AI. Do you have a feel of the uptake within your customers? Do they now use more actual voice conversational AI, or is it, or do the majority still use text based?
Yeah, I think from an evolution standpoint, they originally started with text, right? And more and more it became sort of richer interaction through the text format, right? Like this multimodal interaction, if you will. And through that, we started adding voice and speech interaction. And this was, you don't really want a generic speech interaction, right? Like it needs to work with your brand, with your sort of product family, and things like that. So that was the sort of next logical step, and now we are seeing a lot more of voice only deployments as well in the contact center, for example. Right. So that's been the spectrum for our customers.
Yeah, and as you said, there's some interesting challenges in terms of branding. What voice do we use? Do we use a
Hmm.
female, a male, certain what characteristics?
Hmm.
So what do you, from your experience working with so many different customers and partners, what are some of the challenges companies need to address in order to really get the most out of their conversational AI initiatives?
Yeah, I think um, you know one of the one of the things that companies typically, if you were to start on a conversational AI initiative, let's say 2 years ago, most companies would say, hey, this needs a lot of data, just like with any other AI initiative. And, they've, this can become essentially a big time sink for them, right? So I had one retailer say that they spent about 6 months sort of trying to work through their chat data
Mm.
before they decided to uptake the conversational AI initiative. And I think this is where technologies like deep learning can make a huge difference. And if you have the right base models, it can you can really get this off the ground without that big an upfront investment in these kinds of data processing pieces. Another challenge is companies tend to view this as an add-on, right? Like, okay, I have a website, check. I have a mobile app, check. Oh, I have a chatbot, check, right? Fine. Like it's you're just trying to add on to your existing technology stack, but conversational interfaces are inherently different, right? They are not another type of an app, right? You do want them to companies to think through from the end user's perspective as to how conversation will evolve. Like, what's the type of conversation your users will use? What's the type of voice that your brand needs to use? So getting that perspective initially, like most companies don't tend to think about that, and they do a few iterations on that to get it right. And I think the last challenge has been sort of consistency, if you will, right? You have this great experience, say on Facebook. How do you actually do, take that same thing and do it on, say, your website, right, or your mobile app, and or you've had this great experience in English. How do you do that, say, in Arabic, right? These types of things are some of the challenges that customers face.
Very good. And I guess nowadays we live in a world where we have really good uh, pre-trained machine learning algorithms, so the customization element is much less, right? So,
Hmm.
do as you say, many years ago, if you wanted to deploy this, and if you wanted to develop your own conversational AI, that means training it, looking at all your data, collecting this data, cleaning it, and so on. Nowadays, you can simply go to Oracle, say we use the pre-trained conversational AI.
Hmm.
How much customization is normally required, and does this vary by industry?
Yeah, I mean, typically the core of it, right? Like if you take the customer service domain, or if you take the say the logistics domain, right? A lot of that is baked into those pre-trained models, right? And especially with Oracle, we do have um, an understanding of how these domains are evolving, right? Like so it's Oracle is a leader in supply chain, so we really understand how transportation management actually works, for example, with respect to retail. And so most of that is baked into the base model. And then customers can come in and they say, you know what, you're able to understand most of the variations of language that our end users use, but here's another type of interaction that is very specific for us, right? In the case of Hermes, for example, right, if it is these small business sort of last mile delivery businesses, then they may have a slightly different need, which may not be covered in your sort of pre-trained model. So customers are able to now extend those pre-trained models and say, hey, here's give some more data, maybe let's say 10% more data, and they are quickly able to customize that behavior.
Very good. Mike was asking a question. Are most of your customers using a bespoke setup for their conversational AIs, or do they use off the shelf or tweaked versions of it? I guess this follows on from the conversation we just had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's typically a journey, right? So most customers, when they think of AI initiatives, like I said, there is this sort of the fear of the big blank board, right? So they are thinking like, okay, how do I get started? I need to invest a lot of resources. And this is where taking something off the shelf and the pre-trained skills along with those pre-trained models that are embedded in them, that really sort of eases the sort of entry into the space, right? Once they get in there, the main thing is it's you need to continue to engage with it, right? It's not a technology that you deploy and you forget. So as you deploy and you start receiving user feedback, that's when most customers start extending it. So I would say, depending on where the customer is, if it's 6 months out into the deployment, mostly off the shelf. If it's 2 years, then perhaps more customized versions.
Interesting. So Daniel is saying, I love the topic, but strongly disagree that the scripting is anywhere near complete. Would be interesting to hear from you, Daniel. What do you think where the issues are? How would you respond to that, Srini?
Yeah, see, I think the the challenge with many of the platforms that are out there today is that people think of this as an entirely scripted conversation, right? Like you have to think about what you're going to say at what step. But for example, in our platform, all you say is, "Hey, I want to gather these four things from the customer," right? For example, you're returning an order, and so you need the order number, you need the date of purchase, and the location, for example, right? So in a classic sort of conversational AI chatbot model, you put 3 questions. If the customer is stuck on second question, you keep asking the same question again and again till you get it. Whereas, as the platforms have evolved, like in our platform, users can answer that in any which way, right? They can say, "Oh, I bought it yesterday at Mendocino and at this location," and 2 minutes later they can say, "No, no, it was actually in a different location." And the platform is able to sort of manage that, right? And as we get more and more of this natural conversation baked into the platforms, the scripting element is much less important.
Lovely. So what would you say are some of the best practices then in implementing conversational AIs successfully?
Yeah, I think I think we spoke about this earlier too, Bernard. Right? It's really about that user experience and the brand voice, right? What sort of conversational style really fits your users, and are you communicating it in a way that's consistent with your overall brand, right? That's been like if you start from that point and work backwards, you have the most success, right? Also, conversational AI needs care and feeding, right? So this is effectively supervised learning for most part, and companies need to ensure that they sample these conversations that went right, conversations that did not go right, and help the platform learn from them, right? And that is where the success starts sort of becoming, you know, uh, sort of a cyclical sort of process, right? And again, if you have the in-house expertise for these things, that's great. Otherwise, working with some nimble partner can really reduce the timelines for you, right? So those are some of the things. And of course, we have like a book published on this conversational AI best practices and so on. But it's a
Where
topic
where
that,
where can people find out about the book? Or
yes.
we will put the details into the chat at some point.
Absolutely. So we have on our docs, if you go to docs.oracle.com in the digital assistant section, we have our own digital assistant for docs, which we call as RT. And within that section, you can either use RT or you can directly navigate to the best practices section, and you'll find a bunch of those things there.
Very good. So Bob was asking a question here. What are some examples of pre-trained models, and would HR, so human resources self-service, be an example of such?
Yeah, and I think the best way to think about pre-trained models is like the layers of a cake, right? So at the lowest layer, you have the models which allow you to understand language very broadly, right? And then you layer in, HR, for example, as a domain on top and understanding conversations within that. And then you layer one more level, which is specific things you want to do in HR, like benefits, for example. And that sort of becomes the next layer. So, yeah, I think these are some of the things that are sort of available in our platforms.
Yeah, and I think HR is a huge use case for conversational AI for all businesses, I guess, where you want to provide a better user experience, especially during COVID, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, a short digression, right? Like one of the retailers that I used to work with, they said 40% of their staff in their call centers actually is onboarded in the months of October or so with just 2 weeks of training, right? Just 2 weeks, and then they are in front of the customers, 8, 10 hours, just answering all sorts of difficult questions. And in that kind of an environment, whatever you can do to help them, get the right information faster, can be hugely valuable. Right? And we also had another customer say, our store associates actually get a PDF, right? 30 pages of weekly specials. And they go through the PDF, they try to remember that, and then use it in their conversations with customers. Again, like an excellent opportunity to sort of be that shot in the arm and immediately help them in context. This is where conversational AI can really help.
Excellent. Krishna is asking a good question here. What are some of the key factors to consider in data science from a product management perspective?
Yeah, I think data science is definitely a broad topic, and um, as I said before, conversational AI can leverage a lot of expertise that you may have in data science in your organization, for example, right? So let's say you already have a bunch of data for your vertical, and you already have a bunch of chats and call transcripts, etc. You can leverage that, right? But it's also one of those areas where you don't necessarily need to um, have data scientists to deploy this, right? That is a key thing. And especially with retail, when your overall sort of employee pool is facing these challenges, you don't want to spend another 6 months hiring 12 data scientists before you do your next initiative.
Absolutely. No, that's a good answer. Maybe we can take a look at the future then, maybe looking at the industry first. When you look at what predictions would you make in terms of the retail industry, the CPG industry that we are talking about here today? Are there any specific trends that you're seeing, that you're predicting, that will be challenging or good opportunities in the future for companies in that industry?
I think overall, I mean, this notion of hybrid, it's here to stay, right? Like we are not necessarily shifting back. So as an industry, the more nimble they can become, the more nimble the retailers can become in terms of how they are able to, work with different types of restrictions, different spurts of growth, if you will, right? That will really impact how they are able to succeed. And you also have this. I mean, this has been around for a long time, but there are it's a journey, right? Like this notion of markets of one, right? You don't really have companies haven't reached there yet. This notion of highly personalized interactions, right? Can you move from a place where you buy products to a place where you get advice, right? That journey hasn't really completed, and I
Mm.
think as companies start doing more and more personalization and deliver additional value for their users, that can be a huge thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there especially around the advice added value. I think it's a huge opportunity for retailers, especially in a hybrid model where you
Hmm. Yeah.
have, because I find this hugely frustrating that sometimes you go into a specialist shop and people just work there who have no real experience, who can't really give you any meaningful advice. And then wouldn't it be good to have someone in there? And I think technology can help with all of this. You said that hybrid is here to stay. Do you have any views on whether is it hybrid for all? Because obviously we have big customers that are online only. Then we have some that are, or fewer now, that are physical only. I think most of them are hybrid. Do you think everyone needs to be hybrid in the future?
Yeah, I think uh, even the large retailers, right, like the online retailers, are now getting into, you have your Amazon bookstores, surprise,
Mm,
right? It's a full circle there.
mm,
And you do have your Go stores, and there's a huge value for them to sort of get into that hybrid model, and they are expanding there, right? And same thing, I think the number of pure play brick and mortar stores, I think they are very few, right? Even if there are, even if the point of purchase is your store only, you still need a ton of information online
mm.
to have that, sort of pre-research phase done before you get into the store. So, yeah.
100%. And again, looking into the future in terms of technology and technological innovations, what do you see on the horizon that you are particularly excited about?
Yeah, I think um, most of AI as it stands right now, it still has this sort of a small bump, if you will, before it can be hugely deployed, right? Like quickly deployed and so on. And I think the parts that I'm really excited about is, all these innovations that are happening in deep learning, especially for conversational AI, and things like semantic parsing, where you just point things to, let's say, a data store or like a data lake or some, your content repository for employees, and that's it, right? Like you're able to use it without necessarily spending even 3 months developing something, right? And another category there is all these large language models like your GPT-3 and so on show a lot of promise, and they are not really deployed yet, and it's yet to be seen how their efficacy is, but it's an exciting development, right? Um, and I think we spoke about this before, um, the metaverse, right? Like that's going to be a game changer, especially in this space. And the it may not be that we'll all be in the metaverse. It's that spectrum again, where as we start getting more comfortable with AR, as we start doing virtual showrooming with VR, maybe then we'll start getting into virtual malls and things like that. So it will get there, and it's very fascinating to see that.
I agree. I agree completely. Fascinating conversation, Srini. That was really interesting. We've had people joining us from, I'm just looking through the stream, from Mongolia, from Dubai, from India, from France, from Portugal, another one from Dubai, Nigeria, from New Jersey, from Vancouver in Canada, from Egypt. So thank you so much for everyone to for joining us, and also for commenting. As always, let us know what you think about this session, and if you ever want to rewatch any of those conversations, you can go to my YouTube channel, where you can find hundreds of more videos and conversations that will hopefully be of interest. Thank you so much, Rini, and hopefully we will do this again sometime soon.
Thank you, Bernard. It was great
Thank you.
talking to you.